Joining me now to talk more about that is Texas Congressman, member of the House Ways and Means and Joint Committee, Economic Committee, Jodey Arrington. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
You bet.
What are your hopes in terms of cuts in spending?
Well, my hopes are that we will not continue down this unsustainable path that we're on, which will lead to a debt crisis, which will be far worse than the pandemic, probably any other crisis we've faced. We have to rein in spending. We have to rein in spending. We have to reduce the debt, and we have to act responsibly and live within our means, like every American family, quite frankly, like every state and local government does. And this debt ceiling negotiation, like others in the past, is an opportunity to put a check on that debt and to include fiscal reforms. And there's plenty of waste, plenty of bloat, plenty of unnecessary spending throughout this federal government that has grown exponentially over the last couple of years under this president. And that's my hope, that the outcome will be a responsible one.
Well, I mean, look, the Republicans have talked about going back to 2022 spending levels. If you go back to 2022 spending levels, that is a decline in defense spending by $75 billion. Are you prepared to make that decline?
Oh, there's plenty of non-defense discretionary spending to cut, by the way. We've increased discretionary spending by $500 billion since 19. So, and then there's one-time spending, like there's $100 billion in unspent COVID monies. There's, the cancellation of student debt, which is could be as high as $1 trillion. So right now we have people not working. As you know, this is a problem for the economy. It also is a problem for financing Social Security and Medicare, and we need to put work incentives in place. That alone will create billions of dollars in savings, more tax revenue, and more support for these safety nets that our seniors are relying on. There are plenty of things outside of defense, and that's what we aim to focus on.
Liz.
Congressman, the Democrats are charging Republicans with not really having a plan, talking big, but not really being willing to talk about specifics. At what point do you think it's helpful to this conversation and the argument for lower spending to actually have some specifics on the table, just as you have sort of generalized there? Are the GOP ready to do that or willing to do that?
Well, that's going to be the Speaker's call, but I think most people already know from, let's just go back to one of the first bills we've passed to repeal the expansion of the IRS. That's close to $80 billion. I listed a few other opportunities, both on the mandatory side and the discretionary. So I think at some point we have to have the details and we have to have a detailed plan. But I know that the Speaker doesn't want to negotiate in the press. But I don't think the American people have to use too much of their imagination to know what waste, what unnecessary spending exists in their federal government, especially over the last couple of years with the trillions of dollars. We're talking about $10 trillion, and $5 billion of that has been added to the national debt. That's deficit spending.
That's right. Here's Mike.
Yeah, Congressman Mike Baker here. Happy Groundhog Day, by the way. But
yes.
To push on this point one more time, is there any committee, is there any discussion, is anyone sitting down currently right now making a list of specific cuts? And at what point do you need to deliver that in order to continue this negotiation and actually move it forward?
Well, sooner rather than later. Yes, we have a list, and as the budget chairman, I'm working with my colleagues on a similar list as we fashion this 10-year balanced budget and as we look to freeze 24 discretionary spending at 22. I gave you a few examples, but there are plenty from the so-called COVID relief. And as you know, about 20 cents maybe on the dollar actually went to COVID relief.
Yep.
You look back at the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. That's where you got the $80 billion for more IRS agents. You've got a $27 billion slush fund at EPA. We can go through the litany of Green New Deal giveaways, the expansion of Obamacare, which has been a failure. And these are tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. And then just imagine in 2021, 280 plus billion in improper payments. That's waste, fraud, and abuse. So we have a full bucket of things to reduce spending and realize savings.
These are all really important points that you make, Congressman. Real quick on the border, the judiciary held its first border hearing yesterday. What do you feel came out of that, and what needs to be done in terms of securing the border?
Well, we have to secure the border. While I think the debt is the long-term greatest threat to the future of our country, this is the border crisis, self-inflicted crisis, is the most immediate safety threat. So we have to expose the fact that there's been lawlessness and dereliction of duty by the president and by Mayorkas, and that they have failed to uphold their security mission, and it's literally killing tens of thousands of Americans because the cartels are in control, and they're flooding the zone, as we say, with people, crime, and drugs, and it has to stop. So exposing them, holding them accountable, and it may lead to impeachment. We'll let the process play out in that regard.
It's quite stunning. Congressman, thank you. We'll be watching that. Jodey Arrington is in D.C. this morning. Thank you, sir.